All right. We are live with Dr. Gary before he heads out on his hospice runs. What's going on, my man?
My man, I am so excited to be here as usual. It's been another crazy week at Evolve. We've got news to share with our listeners about Sapien. We have a new product. There's
Mhm.
been some amazing patient stories in clinic, which I want to talk about. How are you? Brian is recently returned from his Africa trip, and there's a full episode from Sapien, and he's got 3 episodes on peak human. And if you guys haven't listened to that and you're listening to this, please check it out, because I honestly think that podcast we did together, Brian, was one of the best we've recorded, period.
Oh, it was great. Gary kind of interviewed me. We're going to put it out maybe right after this one. We'll see the order, but it's on the Africa trip. And yes, I did 4 now with Mary Ruddick on Peak Human. So people can look those up. They're not all out yet. Amazing trip. We won't go into it, but wow, life
And,
changing stuff.
and so everyone knows, one of the major reasons, other than learning and experience, is Brian was able to get some amazing footage for the movie Food Lies. And we'll be sharing clips as we go. But I just think to have some real life, hunter gatherer footage is going to be so powerful for people to see, because we live in such this, insular world, big cities, supermarkets. We forget what real life looks like.
Yeah. And people did get triggered by me posting photos and videos of what real life is like. So it's obvious that we've lost touch with that. So, yeah, it's going to be great for Sapien. Just now, all the stuff we talk about Sapien is all backed up by human evolution and modern science. We've got both worlds combined, and that's why it all makes sense. So, I want to talk today about Sapien diet and lifestyle for younger people. We get a lot of questions about, what about my kids, this and that. Let's dive in. And Dr. Gary has a specific story from a success story from a patient.
Yeah, so I've been seeing more and more younger people. So I'm an internist, and I'm not a pediatrician. So I kind of cut it off at people that are, post puberty, 15, 16 years old. Um, I've had a number of cases, initially, I had a lot of younger people that are our followers that kind of needed specific guidance. And that's great. But that doesn't make for an amazing story, right? Because these are healthy people that are just trying to be healthier, which is great. But again, not a big transformation. More recently, over the last few months, I've had a lot of young people that are actually the children of my patients. So I'll have patients come in, and we talk about everything we talk about, and they feel great. And some of their kids are open to it. And one of the things, that really inspires and drives our mission at Sapien is to help the younger generation. Right now, it's such a confusing and distorted landscape of nutrition in this world that young people are really struggling. I've got a lot of young girls that come to me with skin problems, weird, like fat skin, weak skin, loose skin, just weird stuff. And it always comes down to a lack of protein, a lack of collagen, and a lack of fat in their diet, because they're following the guidelines, or they're following what the media and social media tells them, and they're eating a plant-based diet, and they're really struggling. But more recently, I had this young man come to me. His dad was my patient, and then his mom was my patient, and they started adopting the Sapien lifestyle and feeling great. And their kiddo, who's about 17, has always struggled with weight his whole life. Has always basically eating whatever he wants, and he was way overweight, like 70 pounds overweight at 17. It really affected his confidence. That if he still actually looked great, but mentally, physically, like personally, he was really struggling. He was struggling to feel like a man, and to grow into his adult body. He's a big guy. He's 6'6" at 17. Really, like, it was tough for him. He felt awkward, all this stuff. And he came to me, and really, when I see a young person that's, in their teens, it's really hit or miss. Adults have struggled, and they're ready for a change, but kiddos, and I do consider a teenager a kiddo at this point in my life. it's hard to get through to them. The power and the pleasure that comes from a carbohydrate rich diet is overwhelming. And like we've said before, it's a drug, and it makes you feel good. And if you're struggling with your confidence and you're struggling with your sense of self, it's really hard when food is often the only thing that really can bring you pleasure. And that's what young people get used to. They get used to feeling good from the food. Ironically, they feel bad from the food. They just don't know it. It just makes them feel good short term. So this young guy and I spent maybe an hour just talking about basic principles. And he was, he had all the same questions. What plants? I shouldn't just all eat plants. And oh my God, grains are this bad for you. And whoa, that has sugar and this has sugar and this is processed. Like, he just didn't know really basic nutrition concepts. We talked about macronutrients just on a basic level. We talked about energy metabolism. We talked about the importance of protein and fat. And then we talked about intermittent fasting. I didn't push any of this stuff. Like, it was really an education thing. If you listen to episode 11 of this podcast, of the SAPIEN podcast, where we spent 45 minutes just talking about basic principles of SAPIEN lifestyle, that's really the conversation I had, And when I speak with young people, I use a very, very casual tone. Sometimes I'll throw in a bad word here and there and like references to music or art, because I'm trying to connect with the kids, right? I want them to understand that I'm not this hoity-toity doctor that's like telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. So, it's hit or miss. And I never knew what would happen. I just really, when I have a young person in front of me, I feel like very, very motivated to give them everything I can, because that's where you could transform someone forever, right? So he comes back to me. This was 2 weeks ago. He comes back to me after about 3.5 months. He's 45 pounds down.
Wow.
45 pounds. He is glowing. He's glowing. I mean, it was like, I got emotional. He was glowing. He was radiant. And why was he calling me? Well, he didn't actually have any questions. He was crushing it. He was listening to our podcasts. He was listening to other doctors and other like thought leaders in our community, and he knew what he was doing. He felt really good about it. And he told me that he kind of felt empowered, because instead of just eating whenever and eating whatever, he kind of, by having a guideline and having that basic education, he felt like he had some control of what he was doing. And when we were talking, he's like, this isn't even challenging. This is easy. I eat 2 meals a day. He doesn't even do the classical 16-8 method. He actually ate a solid breakfast, maybe at 10 or 11, and then a really, really nutrient dense dinner around 6 or 7. And that's all it took. And he took out the cereal. That was a big thing for him. He took out all the bread. He found himself some organic, local corn tortillas that was his only carbohydrate. And the pounds kept coming off. He's just felt stronger. He was more powerful on his runs. He had just started dating a girl, and like, you can just see how excited he was. And what happened is his mom joined the conversation, and his mom was saying, oh my God, like, he's developing an eating disorder, and he's not eating 3 meals a day, and he doesn't want to snack. And I'm worried about him.
That's the disorder these days.
That was it.
He doesn't want to snack is the funniest one I've heard.
Verbatim. I mean, that's verbatim. And I think internally she knew that he was crushing, and he was, but I think when you're watching your kiddo grow up, you're worried that they're going to follow your patterns. And she opened up to me about having her own issues with eating disorders and her weight and stuff. And when I had my visit with her, it wasn't about that stuff. It was about her own medical issues. So she was kind of just expressing concerns. And every question I asked and every time we talked, all he was looking for was like, hey, I am feeling great. I'm doing great. I'm not obsessed with food. I'm not doing anything wrong. I feel great. In fact, I liberalized my diet recently and added a little bit more protein and some avocado, because I really, I'm growing and I really wanted that. And I heard you guys talking about it on a podcast. So what ended up happening basically for that consultation was me calming the mother down and letting her know that this is what a normal diet looks like, and that waking up to oatmeal is not healthy, which is what she was sort of pushing him to do. And I'm like, no, he's not going to wake up and consume pesticide laden carbohydrates and screw up his metabolism. He's going to keep doing this. Yeah.
I wanted to make a post about oatmeal. I think it's so funny. It's like, what is the number one way to set yourself up for failure? Start your day off with nutrient devoid carbs. Just
That
empty
you add more
calories.
carbs, and you add more carbs to make it taste good, right? Because oatmeal by itself tastes like shit.
Yeah.
So you got to add
There's no
more
nutrients. Like oatmeal is so funny when you look at everyone pause the podcast and look up nutrition facts of oatmeal, and there's nothing in it. it's just empty calories. It's so funny.
And it's cheap to produce, and they charge a lot for it relative to what it costs. Just like bread, just like cereal, just like all of these processed grains. It's and it doesn't help that if it's steel cut, okay, maybe organic's a little better. It doesn't really make it
But it's
more
still,
nutrient.
there's no nutrition in it, and it's just carbs that are going to send you on a roller coaster for the rest of the day. You're going to be hungry. I mean, maybe if you want the oatmeal, have it for dessert, I guess, right? If that, like, I'm just saying it's a way to really set yourself up for failure for the rest of the day. And being hungry and always looking for snacks is because if you start your day off with that roller coaster.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that this case really brought to my mind is how the trauma and the misinformation of past generations gets projected onto the new generation. And even if you have a young man that's really 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 bright and really really motivated and finds something that works for him and learns about how nutrition and your metabolism work, you still have this challenge that you have parents that have grown up in this broken nutrition system, and you got to educate them so that they're not holding back the younger generation. So it always comes down to this this education problem. And again, when we finished our talk, this was my sort of compromise for her, because I really understood her concern, and I understand the worry that, hey, is my kiddo developing an eating disorder? He's losing weight. And I was very clear to her. I'm like, his BMI was 36 or 37. He was set up for early onset diabetes. He was having skin problems. He wasn't able to enjoy his runs because he was carrying too much weight on him. I mean, this was a guy that was exercising. He just couldn't.
It's obvious that you don't want to carry this much extra weight. I don't even know why you have to convince her of that. I mean,
because everyone in her, in her world, people are heavy. What was healthy at, when people were 150, 160, now the expectation is you're 200-pound man, it's a lot of it is just expectations, and our new normal is being unhealthy. I mean, when you see ads all over social media and the news where, they're glorifying obesity and saying beautiful. It's not big is beautiful. And I think it's, it's tricky. I think some people can carry some weight on them and do okay. But when we're talking about 40, 50, 60 pounds overweight, there's no big is beautiful. You're going to have chronic metabolic disease. You're going to be predisposed to vascular disease and even cancer when you have that much extra fat on your body. And, there's no question about that. So I think that the challenges are there, and again, why I think having a doctor reassure family and having a doctor that can take care of everyone in the family and give everyone a unified message, even if the recommendations are somewhat variable for the different age groups and for people's different needs. Like, she has medical problems, so I give her different recommendations. She's not a 17-year-old kid that's growing and working out and active, and you know what I mean? She's just different. She's just different. So I think once we had the conversation, what I ended it with is, hey, he obviously figured it out. I don't have a lot more to add. His labs didn't look terrible because he was so young, but let's do this. I'm going to see him every 2 months, every 8 weeks. We're going to see each other, and I'm going to keep an eye on him. We're always going to talk about eating disorder questions. We're always going to address, his relationship with food and his overall lifestyle plan. And if I'm concerned or you're concerned, Mom, I'm here. I'm watching him, and you can join our conversations. And I think that put her worries at ease. And I think the kiddo felt empowered, again, like doing something that his mom was concerned about, but having someone guiding him and someone supporting him. I think that's all it took. And it was just connecting the dots. Like, hey guys, I'm going to supervise. I'm going to be here for you. And if we get worried, if we have questions, we're going to have regular follow-up. And it was really, really great. Cause I think that when she looked at her son, you can see that he was glowing and powerful and all these amazing things. And she just needed to know that someone's keeping an eye on him, and someone that she trusts and he trusts, and someone, so I again, it's the power of the doctor-patient relationship that we talk about a lot. And it was just a perfect example of small changes, small concepts that could make dramatic differences. And when those changes are driven by a strong doctor-patient relationship, even a doctor-family relationship, you can change lives. And I told him, I'm like, that's it. Like, you now are set up to live a long, healthy, beautiful life. Embrace it, use the confidence to enjoy, your exploration into dating. And that we finished the conversation talking about exercise strategies, because he was running and he's like, I want to try some other stuff. And I told him about how much of a fan of rowing I am. And we talked about kettlebells and kettlebell swings. And that's, I mean, how great is that? Because now, he's on a road where he's going to live a much higher quality of life and have significant reduced risk for disease. And wow, that was really powerful. And again, I think that young people are really confused. I see a lot of young people, and they're always just confused. They're just like, what the hell is going on? How can I have, 5 people on my feed telling me to eat meat, and then 10 people on my feed telling me to eat only plants? Like, what? It's very confusing. And then now fasting is super popular, and they're like, wait, I thought I was supposed to eat 5 small meals a day. Now they're talking about fasting. What the hell's going on?
Well,
Tough, man.
that's awesome. I love this story. I think we should try to flip the paradigm and flip the message. And I think maybe it would help put the parents at ease sometimes. And maybe you should even go travel to Africa or travel to these other countries so you can say firsthand experience. Like, all we're trying to do is go back to how we used to eat. That's what I'm saying about flipping the message. You're obsessed with this new wacky insane model of snacking and food and all this stuff, so that's what you're used to. We're just talking about going back to, say, how we ate in the 50s, even, let alone 5,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, even just 1950s, that where you didn't snack, you were going to spoil your dinner if you snacked, and you ate 3 square meals a day. And that's fine. If you're a growing kid, eat 3 square meals a day. You don't need to do 2 meals like, we do. But just flip the conversation to, we're not doing anything strange, Mom or Dad. We're doing what kids did forever. I just saw kids eating all animal foods diets and not snacking and doing amazing. So I like that, flipping the script. And also, yeah, like, we should just talk about more general stuff for all ages even. I think what we usually see is the opposite of what you saw, is where the child teaches the parents in a way. So maybe we can address the opposite. If there's a lot of parents come to you, or they have questions for me online of, is this safe for a kid, or how do I get my kid to do it? That type of thing. So yeah, I'll start off with my point of view. And I know you're not a pediatrician either, and you kind of try to stay away from that, and you can't make recommendations either, right? This is just a podcast for informational purposes, but people all across the world post online and send me things about feeding their infants just meat-based diets. We asked a lot of the people in Africa, what do you wean the kids off of breast milk from? And it's like fatty meat was a lot of the answers. Sometimes they give them like whatever type of plant foods they chew on. But there's nothing wrong with starting kids on the same foods that adults eat. I mean, why? Kid food is a new concept. That's a marketing concept made up by Kellogg's and all these ridiculous cereals and Tony the Tiger. So I'll let you take the floor now.
I mean, just to expand on that, and maybe it's a little weird, but like dog food too, like animal food, like you don't have to have processed GMO crap. We're animals. We all share certain, needs. And, I think that kids, so it's really hard to so let me step back. Kids are a product of their environment and the education they're provided. And if you just let a kid dictate what they like, for example, with food, then yeah, of course they're going to love French fries and pizza and spaghetti and sugary everything because it's the most palatable thing. And so parents will struggle getting their kids to eat this or that. And they end up saying, oh, my kid only likes carbs. Well, of course they do. That's a processed food that's built to make you eat more of it. It's built to be highly palatable. I try to teach people, kids, parents, anyone, to build a savory palate in young children. Why? Because it's the savory foods that are the healthy foods, and they are the foods of our ancestors. Sugars and carbs were never readily available. So we love the taste of sugar because it's not something that we had access to all the time. So when you got the honey pot or when the fruit came bearing on the trees, it was time to eat it because you didn't have a refrigerator, you didn't get it often, so you got to consume it. And that's how we evolved, right? But now is a different story, and this stuff is available everywhere. And most of the sugars, at least in America, are a corn. They're a processed corn product, which is really, really bad. It's mostly fructose, which is not a good form of sugar anyway. It's just a lot. It's a lot of fake food. So, you know, understanding that your kid will eat what you put in front of them if you stand by your convictions of like, I want a healthy kid. Sometimes it's a challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to teach your kid good manners. It's a challenge to teach your kid to play outside and not just sit and stare at a screen. It's a challenge to create discipline and structure. It's just as important to do that with food. And one way to think about it is develop the savory palate of a child. Don't give them sweets all the time. Don't give them carbohydrate rich foods, and let them build a palate for these savory, salty, sour, fermented foods so that they can consume healthy food for the rest of their life. I do think that a lot of it is it's not the parents' fault because the food system in our society sort of encourages this behavior. But if a parent or a kiddo is really interested in being healthy and their kid being healthy long term, you teach them to enjoy a savory palate. I'll use the example of my childhood and a lot of the European immigrants that I grew up with. We all love savory food. The ones that were born here in America and whose parents were highly Americanized and followed the more, American diet, they don't like savory foods and all they eat is carbs. So is there something different between me and the equivalent of me that was born in America? No, it was just the upbringing, the foods that were presented to them as a child, as a baby, as a adolescent. And so, I think it's important to focus on that concept of building the savory palate, because then it just inherently you will consume healthier foods. And when we say, hey, you should try these fermented foods, you're not going to say, ew, that's nasty, I just want a bowl of cereal or a bowl of spaghetti. No, you're going to embrace that healthy food.
Start them
It's something
young.
I talk about. Start them young and also stick to it. Like, stick to it. Don't buckle all the time and be like, they need French fries. They don't need French fries. They just don't. Make that a treat. make real food, and then they can have treats. Sometimes I understand kids need the treats, it's fine, but it can't be a bowl of spaghetti and a bowl of cereal and then a bunch of fruit and then a candy bar as a treat. It's a disaster. That's what most of these kids are eating. And again, it comes back to educating the parents and educating the public on what real food is.
I love that. And yes, and there's growth phase people and there's people who need to restrict, right? Like we deal with a lot of people that need to cut back on their eating so they can lose weight. That's most of America. But these people in the growth phases, there's a different strategy, right? And so the kids are in growth phases, pregnant women are in growth phases, bodybuilders are in growth phases. Those are like the classic three. And so this is a different diet. This is a different version of Sapien. But it's still similar. We still have the same foundational principles. It's still based on the whole foods and the proteins and fats. So just know, yes, like I said already, kids can eat 3 times a day. That's fine. They don't need to eat 6 times a day though. There's no reason
Right.
to eat 6 times a day. This is just made up by the food industries, and the schools just buy into it. And well, it's all a product of the system where, yes, if you do give them these bogus breakfasts of like croissants and low fat yogurt with sugar and orange juice, then they are going to be hungry for a snack in 2 hours. But that's not because they need a snack. It's because you gave them the wrong food and their blood sugar is crashing. And now they need to get it up again with some more sugar, right? It's like, this is insane when you think about it. Just think about it like that. You gave them basically a blood sugar poison, and then they had to get more of it 2 hours later because they're on this roller coaster. That they don't need a snack. You
And in a
created
way,
the snack need.
And in a way, you feed like an addiction process, right? We talk a lot about hunger and satiety. And when you're feeding a kiddo a breakfast full of protein and fat, and again, we're not saying no carbs, right? We're just saying
Yeah.
healthy carbs, thoughtful consumption of carbs.
Yeah.
Like I know people that make their own baby food will take a sweet potato and add some grass-fed ghee. So that's carbs, but that's also really healthy fat. And that's also a carbohydrate that's natural and much, much healthier and more nutrient dense than, let's say, pasta or
And
cereal
satiating.
and
And
satiating.
yeah.
So the idea is that when you feed your kids these products or adults, you're driving the mechanism, the dopaminergic part of the brain that creates addiction. And that's what makes them feel good. And that's why they want to eat it again. In addition to the hormone changes with insulin and leptin and ghrelin that cause them to be hungry again and causes their blood sugar to drop. When you feed them satiating, nutrient dense foods, one, it doesn't push that part of the brain that's addiction. So you don't have that desire and drive and obsession with these foods, but it also makes them satiated. So there's two mechanisms going on here that are really important. And this is important for everyone, not just kids, but I guess what I'm saying is if you start feeding your kids food that drives this addiction process, you're making them addicted to that food. And, in my world, it's really, really like bad parenting, and it's not the parents' fault. It's our society's fault, honestly. But the information is out there, and if you're listening to this, there's a lot of folks that are doing these Sapien style diets for their kids. More recently, Flav City, who I talk about a lot, Bobby Parrish, he's like a professional shopper and cook, and he has a great YouTube and Instagram channel where he goes around and shows you how to purchase foods, and he calls it clean keto paleo. Clean keto paleo is Sapien. That's essentially like the same thing, right?
100%. Yeah.
100%. I've reached out to him. He's whatever. But the point is he does both shopping and cooking shows. And I use it as a resource because he really is essentially recommending a Sapien. He recently had a baby, and they did a ton of baby food. Like they made their own baby food.
Yeah.
And it's if you're a parent or you're going to be a parent, that is a great place to start. There's amazing, simple, easy to make recipes that that can help your baby grow into being a healthy young person instead of creating an addiction and building bizarre, weird lipid membranes in their cells because they're consuming bizarro fats that aren't natural to them. And it's all out there, you know. And by the way, before baby food, this is what people did. They made their own baby food, and it wasn't just like, here, let me take a grain and feed that to my kid. It was much more thoughtful. And it's a combination of animal foods and plant foods, but it's thoughtfully done.
Mm-hmm.
So check out a Flav City, FLAV City. There, he's
Free
great.
promo over there.
Look, I'll promote Bobby and his team all day long, because like, he's brought so many amazing products into my world. He's shown me how to cook certain things that I always wondered about, and most of all, he has shown me how to shop. And those recommendations that he shared with me, I share with my patients. People that are the shoppers in their household, usually there's like one or two people that shop for the household. That person gets that recommendation on the first visit, because if you can learn how to look through the marketing and advertising and grab that bottle, turn it around, look at the ingredients and be able to analyze it, and not just turn it around and look, oh, what's the total fat? Oh, what's the calories? Oh, what's the sodium? Like, no, it's nonsense. What are the ingredients? It can have a great profile based on that. But when you see carrageenan or you see some kind of weird preservative in there, don't buy that shit.
Yeah, that's good. I guess I just take it for granted because I can just figure this stuff out, and I just know what to look for, or I just don't buy things with ingredient lists anyway. Or it's good to have a resource so for people beginning. But before we have to go, I love the part about the young people with the bad fats in their body, because I think that's a huge problem. You know, you can listen to my episodes with Tucker Goodrich, Kate Shanahan. That was a good one on seed
Kate
oils.
Shanahan, yes, amazing.
Yeah, I've done 3 with Kate now because of this combined episode. But anyway, you don't want these seed oils, these foreign oils building your body, but especially not when you're growing. I mean, maybe that's why we have these childhood diabetes. All this stuff is getting younger and younger, and people are giant. I mean, you see giant kids out there, young kids, and it's almost not even possible with just with normal foods. Like with the seed oils have to be driving this.
I think that the seed oils, the vegetable oils are the root of most of what we're seeing. You know, I think, you know, going back to the 50s, like you were saying, we still had carbohydrates, right? There was sugar in our diet. You know, a lot of the sugars were actually real sugar, like cane sugar and brown sugar, not high fructose corn syrup.
Or the bread. Your mom made the bread, but there still was cereals. There was Kellogg's, right? Kellogg's had all their marketing, and they weren't nightmares. It wasn't like a nightmare. Although the Crisco, the margarine stuff was coming in, but I don't think it was a huge part of people's diet.
So that's where I think we wanted to talk, is like, when we replaced animal fats with fake oils, the trans fats, and now the vegetable oils, I think that's where we've created real disease. And I don't think we fully understand it. You know, we've talked about how you know, your cells are made out of these lipid membranes, and the interface that your body has with the outside world, your whole mouth to anus lining is essentially a fat with polysaccharide membrane. That membrane is the interface with your environment, and that's where a lot of your immune system lives, right? Like, the way your body responds to the outside world is based on that lipid membrane and the different proteins and sugars in there driving your immune response. When you're a young person and you're developing all these cells and you're developing these membranes, and all of the fats you're consuming are these abnormal, non-natural fats, you know, you start replacing these lipid membranes with not natural fats. And we don't even understand fully how damaging that is, but it's very clear that not just the carbohydrate consumption, but these seed oils are creating disease. So when we talk about the gut microbiome and a dysfunctional gut microbiome, I know that the heart of it is these fake fats, for lack of a better word. I'm going to call it fake fats because they're fake. You know, when you're consuming rapeseed or the canola oil, which is rapeseed and corn oil, like, Have you ever looked at these seeds? Can you see fat? Like you need so much pressure and heat and processing to get that oil out. In the natural world, you would only be able to consume a very, very, very small amount, and it wouldn't affect you in a negative way. But when you process this food and you create these vast amounts of oils, um, God only knows what that's doing to us. And I think the future will prove us right, because just like the trans fats were proved to be poisonous and we had to take them out of the diet, instead of going back to animal fats the way we had always used, we moved to these vegetable oils. We genetically modified soybeans and then processed those soybeans to create soybean oil that looks like animal fat, but it's not animal fat. And you're playing with nature, and you're really setting yourself up for a disaster. And I think that so many of our food system manipulations are done for financial reasons, and they're done to make them shelf stable and financially viable, at the cost of our health. And because they're not required to study them, and the regulations to approve these things are not satisfactory in my mind, we find out decades later how bad these things are, and it's often too late. So,
And decades later, that's how long it takes. That's a cruel kind of tragedy of this
rule.
all is, some things you'll eat them and you feel bad right away. Some things you'll consume them or smoke them or something and you feel bad that week or that month. But these seed oils, you won't feel anything. Maybe some people, like, you can feel in your stomach and it feels upset, especially when you get rid of them and you eat some of them. Then you're like, ugh, what
Oh
did I
yeah,
eat? And
that's
it's
the
a seed.
realization.
But really, you don't notice the problems for years, decades, and then they start popping up. And that's what I saw in Uganda, that I mentioned in all my Africa content, is that they didn't have fast food, they didn't have all these processed foods, they didn't have sodas, they just had the cooking oils, they had the seed oils, and it caught up to them. And the ladies were 45, 50, giant obese women that have never been seen before in Uganda. And but until the cooking oils came in, and it took that many years for it to catch up with them. So it's a slow moving train that's disastrous. So just don't just don't start, just get rid of them now. It takes actually a couple of years. I think it was like a year and a half to get out of your system, because yeah, there's a whole process that needs to happen.
And the question that I have is, if you're raising your kid on these seed oils, can you ever really get rid of them? I don't know the answer to that. Like, if your cells are growing and this is the only fat that you're consuming, or the majority of the fat that you're consuming, can you ever really replace it and make it look normal? I mean, again, this is just the theory and a question I ask, but I just wonder, when you just see so much morbidity in the 40s and 50s, and I feel like a lot of that is driven by the behaviors in your childhood. And I don't know if that's reversible, and I think that yes, you can do better. But that's why we wanted to talk about, the sapien diet for young people, because I think that's where the real intervention happens. I think if you can get a kiddo to eat real food, you can set them up for success long term. I think that it's awesome to intervene on 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever year olds. And it's really great to see those stories. But it's the 15, 16, 17 year old that starts eating a sapien diet and never gets sick and never develops heart disease and is proud of themselves and doesn't live in a world of brain fog and doesn't carry around 40 extra pounds of fat. That's the future that I want to see.
It's amazing. Get them
We'll
young.
see.
I love it. I love it. This is a great this is turning into a full-on episode, not a SAPIEN Lite little Zoom episode. But wow, great stuff. Share this with family and friends, right? Get the word out. Maybe they'd have to also listen to, I guess it's number 11, that's season 2,
Number
episode 1
11.
of SAPIEN, to learn more after this episode, and they can kind of backtrack and learn more. You can go to sapien.org/diet, and there's some resources there. We'll try to make some more resources available. There's no time or money with SAPIEN. We're trying to get it going still. It's in its early stages, but yeah, we're going to have a lot of useful content and tools before too long, especially with teaming up with Mary Ruddick. I'm really excited about that after Africa trip. And I think
Me
she's
too.
part of this and really push this to the next level. So yeah, go to sapien.org, check out everything we got there. We have the program for people who want to, lose weight, reverse disease, feel great. It's online. You can do it anywhere in the world. We have our new product, Brain Fuel, that actually just as of today, the payment system's actually working. So you can grab your own. There's only a few left. This is a kind of a high demand product, I guess. It's amazing nootropic adaptogenic mushroom based product that Gary can talk about for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using nootropics for years. I was inspired by Alpha Brain by Onnit. It's a great product. That's a mushroom-based cognitive enhancer. We've used a bunch of nootropics over the years, and we started working with this team that harvests herbs and mushrooms in the wild and with only organic farmers, and they're super, super thoughtful. They put together a product that rivals Alpha Brain. It's a lion's mane and L-theanine based product. It's really, really powerful. It's, look, if you're into nootropics, this is a really, really great option for you. And if you've never tried nootropics, we've made it a very affordable price so that you could try it out and not feel like you're, breaking your back for it. We're going to be adding to our Sapien store with products that we believe in, things that ameliorate our food system, because unfortunately you have to supplement a little bit, at least for most people, to supplement what is missing in our food, because the idea that everything's in your food that's not true, not in America, not in 2021. So we want to help people with that. Check out Brain Fuel. It's great. Store.sapien.org, or just go to sapien.org and check out the store link. Also, I can't close a podcast without mentioning Nose to Tail. Nose to Tail is Brian's baby. He works with farmers locally here in America that do farming right. They practice regenerative agriculture and help you get the highest quality animal products into your life. He's expanded recently to some great seasonings and even a skincare product, which people are loving. So check that out. I guess the only other thing is, if you're interested in working with me and checking out my clinic, you can contact my office at evolvehealthcare.com. Is there anything else,
Absolutely.
Brian?
No, I suggest that highly. And you do some remote visits, so
Yep.
you can do that. And man, we're doing some things. People are having some great success, and I'd love to hear all these stories. And we'll continue telling some of the highlights, and let's just have some success with yourself.
Thank you all for listening.